When I was 16, a girl saved my father's life with everything she had. 10 years later, I found her washing dishes for $60 a day. When I was 16 years old, I learned something that no teenager should ever have to learn. Sometimes life doesn't ask whether you're ready. It simply takes everything. My father had worked construction for nearly 25 years. He wasn't educated, and he wasn't rich, but he believed in one simple rule. As long as I can work, my family will never go hungry. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, that promise shattered. A steel support beam snapped 6 stories above him. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, his spine had been crushed. I still remember the doctor removing his glasses before speaking. It's a complicated spinal injury. If we operate immediately, there's a chance he'll walk again. If we wait. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. My mother broke down before he could. How much? The doctor looked at the file. The surgery and rehabilitation will cost approximately $200,000. The room went completely silent. $200,000. Our family didn't have 200,000 cents. My father tried to laugh. It's okay. I've lived a good life. Just let me go home. The doctor quietly left us alone. That night we searched every corner of our tiny apartment. My mother emptied old cookie tins. I checked every drawer. My father insisted we sell his tools. By dawn, our entire family's savings amounted to exactly $3,842.17. Less than 2% of what we needed. The next morning, I made my decision. College no longer mattered. Dreams could wait. My father couldn't. I walked into the principal's office carrying a withdrawal form. I'd like to leave school. The principal frowned. You graduate in 6 months. I know. You've ranked first in physics all year. I know. You have scholarship offers. I know. He sighed. Think about your future. I smiled bitterly. My future is lying in a hospital bed. Leaving the office felt strangely peaceful. At least I had made a choice. I would find work. Construction. Warehouse. Factory. Anything. As I reached the school gates, someone called my name. Frank. I turned around. It was Somerville Hayes. She was the quietest student in our class. Always sitting one row behind me. Always reading. Always taking perfect notes. Teachers loved her. Students respected her. Yet hardly anyone actually knew her. She walked toward me holding a small white envelope. I heard. I forced a smile. I'll be fine. She looked at the withdrawal papers in my hand. No, you won't. Before I could react, she placed a bank card into my palm. Go save your father. I stared at it. What is this? The tears came before the words did. No one had ever believed in me like that. Not even me. She gave a small nod. As long as you're alive, there is always another chance. Then she turned and quietly walked back toward the school building. She never looked back. 3 days later, my father underwent surgery. It lasted nearly 11 hours. Every minute felt like another year. When the surgeon finally walked out, he smiled. The operation was successful. If rehabilitation goes well, he should walk again. My mother collapsed into tears. My father survived. Because of one girl. I never told anyone where the money came from. Not my parents. Not my teachers. Not my friends. It was a promise between Somerville and me. A promise I intended to honor. Life slowly returned to normal. I worked nights at a grocery warehouse. Studied between shifts. Slept 4 hours a day. Somehow, I graduated near the top of my class. Weeks later, another envelope appeared inside my locker. No name. No signature. Just cash for living expenses. And one handwritten note. Don't give up. The handwriting was unmistakable. Somerville. Every month, another envelope arrived. Always enough to survive. Never enough to become comfortable. And always carrying the exact same message. Don't give up. She never once mentioned the money. Never asked for thanks. Never expected anything in return. Then, one day, she disappeared. Graduation came. Everyone celebrated. Photos were taken. Families laughed. I searched the crowd for hours. She wasn't there. The teachers said she'd accepted a scholarship at one of the country's best universities. No goodbye. No phone number. No forwarding address. She simply vanished from my life, leaving behind one old bank card and 3 words that would stay with me forever. Don't give up. I had no idea. It would take me 10 years to find her again. And when I finally did, the girl who had once saved my entire family would be standing ankle-deep in dirty dishwater, earning $60 a day, while the people who had stolen her future toasted champagne to their success. That was the day I made myself one promise. This time, I was going to save her. I often wondered how many times Somerville had quietly saved me without me ever knowing. The bank card wasn't the only thing she gave me. She gave me time. She gave me hope. Most importantly, she gave me permission to dream when life was trying to convince me to quit. College wasn't what people imagined. There were no carefree weekends, no parties, no vacations. During the day, I attended engineering classes. At night, I unloaded delivery trucks at a warehouse. On weekends, I worked construction sites, the same kind of job that had nearly killed my father. Every dollar went toward my father's rehabilitation and my family's rent. Some months I ate one meal a day. Other months I skipped meals entirely. Whenever things became unbearable, another anonymous envelope appeared. Inside was just enough money to survive. Never more. Always enough. Folded inside was the same note. Don't give up. I knew exactly who had sent it. During my sophomore year, everything nearly fell apart again. My father's condition suddenly worsened. Scar tissue had formed around his spine. The doctors recommended another procedure and months of rehabilitation. The cost was almost $20,000. I had already borrowed everything I could. The bank rejected my loan. My relatives stopped answering my calls. For the first time in years, I seriously considered dropping out. Again, that night I sat alone outside the hospital staring at my nearly empty bank account. No explanation. Only one message attached to the transfer. Don't give up. I closed my eyes. I didn't need a name. I already knew. A month later, I secretly returned to our hometown during semester break. I wanted to thank her. Not with words. Just by seeing her. I waited outside the university cafeteria. Around noon, I finally spotted Somerville. She looked thinner than I remembered. Instead of eating with her classmates, she quietly bought the cheapest bowl of plain noodles. No meat. No vegetables. Just noodles. I watched from across the courtyard. Day after day, she ate exactly the same thing. Only later did I realize why. She wasn't saving money for herself. She was sending it to me. Every envelope I received was bought with the meals she skipped. I turned around before she could see me. I couldn't face her. Not because I was ashamed of being poor. Because I realized someone else had been carrying my burden all along. Years passed. Graduation came. Then my first job. Then another. I worked 18 hours a day. People called me obsessed. Maybe they were right. I started a small software company from the corner of a rented office no larger than a storage room. For 2 years, the company barely survived. There were months I couldn't pay myself. Investors laughed at my ideas. Banks refused to finance me. Competitors copied our products. Employees quit. My success didn't begin with intelligence. It began with one girl who believed in me before anyone else did. Despite everything I had built, there was one thing I never stopped searching for. Somerville. Every year, I hired investigators. Every year, they came back empty-handed. No recent address. No employment records. No social media. Nothing. It was as though she had erased herself from the world. Sometimes I wondered if she wanted it that way. Maybe she'd built a happy life. Maybe she'd gotten married. Maybe she'd forgotten about the scared 16-year-old she once rescued. I hoped she had. Because if anyone deserved happiness, it was her. 10 years after we graduated, I finally stopped looking. Not because I wanted to. Because I convinced myself she'd be happier without someone from her past reopening old memories. Then, one rainy Thursday morning, everything changed. Casey, my executive assistant of 5 years, walked into my office carrying a tablet. His expression was unusually serious. "Mr. Frank, I think we found her." My heart stopped. He placed the tablet on my desk. At the top of the screen was a public court database. One name, Somerville Hayes. Below it, every word felt like a punch to the chest. Listed debtor. Personally liable under a corporate guarantee. Outstanding balance, $4.2 million. Assets frozen. Subject to court enforcement. I read the page again. Then again. It couldn't be right. The girl who had once given away everything she owned was now drowning in debt. Casey quietly broke the silence. Our investigators confirmed it's the same Somerville. They also found something else. He slid another folder toward me. Inside was a recent photograph. She looked almost unrecognizable. Her shoulders were thinner. Her smile was gone. The confidence I remembered had disappeared. Only exhaustion remained. I stared at the photo for a long time, then slowly reached into the locked drawer of my desk. Inside wrapped in a faded handkerchief, was the old bank card she had pressed into my hand 10 years earlier. I had carried it through every success, every failure, every business deal, every board meeting. It had become my reminder of where I came from. I closed my fingers around it, then looked at Casey. Prepare the car. Where are we going, sir? I slipped the bank card into my pocket. This time, I'm the one who's going to find her. I had no idea that before sunset, I'd find the woman who once saved my future, living in a nightmare she never deserved. An hour later, my black sedan pulled into the oldest part of the city. The neighborhoods outside the window grew poorer with every block. Glass office towers gave way to cracked apartment buildings. Luxury stores disappeared, replaced by pawn shops and payday lenders. Finally, Casey slowed the car. We're here. I looked up. The apartment building in front of us looked like it was one strong wind away from collapsing. Rust stained the concrete walls. Most of the windows were covered with cardboard instead of glass. The elevator had been condemned years ago. Someone had spray-painted one word across the entrance. Pay up. I stepped out of the car. The old bank card felt heavier than ever inside my pocket. Apartment 407. Casey knocked. No answer. He knocked again. This time the door flew open. A bald man wearing a dirty tank top glared at us. A cigarette hung from the corner of his mouth. What do you want? I'm looking for Somerville Hayes. His eyes narrowed. You family? No. A slow grin spread across his face. Too bad. She owes our boss over $1 million. If you're here to pay it, come in. The smell hit me first. Beer. Cigarettes. Rotting food. The apartment looked nothing like a home. Broken furniture. Empty bottles. Torn curtains. The walls were covered with threats written in red paint. Pay your debt. We'll be back. My stomach tightened. This isn't her furniture. The man laughed. Course not. The court seized everything. Our boss moved us in last week. She ran away. Casey quietly searched the apartment. A minute later he returned. Sir, the bedroom is empty. I walked inside. The closet doors hung open. Not a single piece of clothing remained. The mattress was gone. Dust covered the floor. She hadn't left yesterday. She'd been gone for days. I turned toward the man. Where is she? He shrugged. How should I know? Maybe under a bridge. Maybe sleeping in a shelter. People like her disappear every day. Something inside me snapped. Not anger. Something colder. The kind of calm that comes just before a storm. I looked at Casey. Find her. I don't care how. I want every investigator we have searching. Casey nodded immediately. Yes, sir. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. We have a lead. A traffic camera had captured Somerville Crossing into the South District. The worst neighborhood in the city. Even the police avoided it after dark. Homeless camps stretched beneath abandoned overpasses. Street gangs controlled entire blocks. People didn't move there. They ended up there. By the time we arrived, night had fallen. Rain dripped from broken streetlights. The sidewalks smelled of grease and sewage. Our luxury sedan looked absurd among the abandoned buildings. Casey pointed toward a tiny restaurant squeezed between two pawn shops. Our source says she's working there. $60 a day. Meals included. $60. The girl who had once financed my education was surviving on $60 a day. I opened the restaurant door. Before I could step inside, a woman screamed, Are you blind? The entire restaurant fell silent. Through the crowd, I saw her. Somerville. For a moment, I couldn't move. She wore a faded gray apron several sizes too big. Her hair was tied back carelessly. The confident girl I remembered was gone. She looked painfully thin. Her hands were red and cracked from detergent. She knelt on the floor wiping spilled soup with an old towel. Standing over her, wearing designer clothes worth more than a year's salary, was another woman. Look what you've done. My dress is ruined. The woman kicked the bowl across the floor. Soup splashed across Somerville's apron. She didn't argue. She simply picked up the broken pieces. Then I saw the man sitting beside the woman. And suddenly, everything made sense. Wilson Carter, her former fiancé, the co-founder of Ether Technologies, the man whose name appeared beside hers in every court filing. He leaned back comfortably, swirling expensive wine. Somerville, I told you this would happen. You should have listened to me. The woman beside him laughed. Honestly, I almost didn't recognize you. You used to be the smartest woman in the room. Now you're washing dishes. She deliberately emphasized the last two words. The restaurant customers looked away. No one wanted trouble. Wilson smiled. You brought this on yourself. You insisted on taking responsibility. Now look at you. Somerville quietly continued wiping the floor. She never looked up. She placed it on the teacher's desk. The security footage. Everyone fell silent. She pointed to the timestamp. During the time the money disappeared, Frank was helping the physics department inventory equipment. He couldn't have taken it. No one spoke. She slowly turned toward the class. Her voice was calm. Being poor doesn't make someone a thief. If you don't have evidence, stop judging people. That afternoon, she found me sitting alone near the football field. She didn't comfort me. She didn't pity me. She simply looked me in the eyes. Frank, never bow your head. Now, 10 years later, the same girl who had once defended me was lowering her own head before people who didn't deserve her respect. I clenched my fists. The restaurant owner hurried over, bowing repeatedly to Wilson. I'm terribly sorry, sir. Wilson pointed toward Somerville. Fire her, or I'll make sure every health inspector in this city visits your restaurant. The owner's face turned pale. He slowly looked at Somerville. I'm sorry, but today's your last day. Somerville quietly untied her apron. No argument. No complaint. Just acceptance. She placed the apron on the counter, picked up her worn backpack, and walked toward the back exit. I took one step forward, then stopped. Casey looked at me. Should we intervene? I watched Wilson laughing with the woman who had stolen everything from Somerville. No, not yet. He looked surprised. I need to know everything. I want every document, every bank transfer, every email, every lie. If I'm going to destroy them, I'll do it properly. Somerville disappeared into the rainy night. I let her go, for now, because before I reached out my hand, and once I knew the truth, I would make sure they never escaped it. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Casey. By sunrise, my office had become a war room. Stacks of financial records, court filings, bank transfers, and corporate contracts covered the conference table. Casey walked in carrying one final folder. His expression told me everything before he spoke. You were right, Mr. Frank. It wasn't bad luck. It was planned. I slowly opened the folder. The deeper I read, the colder I became. 3 years earlier, Somerville and Wilson had founded Ether Technologies together. Somerville built the company's software. She wrote the code, designed the security architecture, filed the original patent applications. Wilson handled investors, public relations, and finances. On paper, they were partners. In reality, she built the company. He built the illusion. A year later, Wilson approached her with what he called the opportunity of a lifetime. A government contract, a massive expansion, a $4.2 million business loan. According to the recorded meeting Casey had obtained, Wilson smiled at her and said, Somerville, we're getting married. You trust me, don't you? This guarantee is only temporary. As soon as the project succeeds, we'll pay everything back. She signed, not because she trusted the contract, because she trusted him. It was the biggest mistake of her life. Within 48 hours of receiving the loan, Wilson quietly transferred nearly all of the money into a shell company. That shell company belonged to only one person, Ulysses Grant, the same woman who had mocked Somerville in the restaurant. Officially, the transfers were labeled marketing expenses, consulting fees, business development. In reality, they paid for luxury apartments, sports cars, designer handbags, private vacations, everything. Investors blamed Somerville. Creditors sued Somerville. The banks activated the unlimited personal guarantee. Wilson walked away almost untouched. Somerville inherited every dollar of debt. I closed the file. So he stole her company, made her guarantee the loan, then dumped every liability onto her. Casey nodded. It gets worse. He handed me a medical report. The patient's name made my chest tighten. Margaret Hayes, Somerville's mother. Diagnosis, end-stage kidney failure. Treatment required, emergency dialysis. Payment overdue. Outstanding balance, $20,000. $20,000. Again, the exact amount she had secretly transferred to save my father years ago. Life had come full circle. Except this time, she had no one left. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I felt guilty. I had spent 10 years building companies, buying buildings, closing billion-dollar deals, all while the person who made my success possible was fighting alone. I looked at Casey. When is the payment due? He checked his tablet. This afternoon. If it isn't paid, the hospital will suspend treatment. I stood immediately. Get the car. The hospital corridors smelled of disinfectant and fear. Before we reached the billing department, voices echoed down the hallway. Wilson. I recognized him instantly. He stood outside the payment office wearing an expensive tailored suit. Beside him stood Ulysses, dressed head to toe in designer brands. Across from them stood Somerville. She looked exhausted. She held an unpaid hospital bill with both hands. Wilson casually removed a thick stack of cash from his pocket. $20,000. Enough to keep your mother alive. He smiled. But there's one condition. He handed her a document. Sign this. She glanced at the paper. It was a legal declaration surrendering every remaining claim to Ether Technologies, including all future rights to the patents she had created. Wilson folded his arms. Once you sign, I'll pay the hospital. You'll never have to see me again. Somerville's hands trembled. You already stole my company. You stole my research. You ruined my life. Wilson shrugged. Can you prove it? She looked down. Silence. Ulysses stepped forward wearing a fake smile. Oh, Somerville. Don't be stubborn. You're not thinking about yourself anymore. Think about your mother. Wilson held the money out again. Choose your pride or your mother's life. The hallway fell silent. I watched Somerville's shoulders shake. For 10 years, she had never bowed her head. Not when she lost her company. Not when she became homeless. Not when strangers humiliated her. But now, her mother's life depended on $20,000. Slowly, she reached toward the cash. Not because she wanted it, because she had no other choice. Before her fingers touched the bills, I stepped forward. My hand caught her wrist. She froze. Slowly, she turned toward me. For several seconds, she simply stared, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The hallway disappeared. There was only the two of us. Her lips parted. Frank. I smiled gently. It's me. I'm sorry. I'm 10 years late. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Wilson frowned. You know this guy? I didn't even look at him. Instead, I carefully took the hospital bill from Somerville's trembling hands and passed it to Casey. Pay everything. The outstanding balance. Future treatments. Private care. Whatever her mother needs. Casey nodded once. Immediately, sir. He walked toward the billing office without another word. Wilson laughed. You think $20,000 makes you a hero? I finally turned to face him. No. It simply removes your last bargaining chip. His smile disappeared. Ulysses crossed her arms. And who exactly are you supposed to be? I stepped closer. My name is Frank. The boy she saved 10 years ago. Wilson frowned. The charity case? The kid she kept throwing money at. He laughed. I guess she really wasted her investment. I smiled. No. I'd say it was the best investment either of us ever made. Then I reached into my pocket. Not for my wallet. Not for my phone. But for the old, worn bank card she had given me all those years ago. I held it up between us. I've carried this every single day for 10 years. And today, I finally get to return the favor. Wilson had no idea that in less than 48 hours, everything he had spent years stealing would belong to the woman he believed he had destroyed. The hallway fell silent. Wilson stared at me for several seconds before laughing. It started as a chuckle. Then it became full-blown laughter. You, the broke kid from high school. You expect me to believe you can save her? Ulysses laughed beside him. This has to be the funniest thing I've seen all year. Somerville, is this seriously your backup plan? A charity case? Neither of them noticed Casey returning from the billing office. He walked straight toward me and handed over a receipt. Mr. Frank, the hospital has received full payment. Mrs. Hayes has been transferred to the VIP renal care unit. Dr. Reynolds' team is preparing treatment now. Somerville covered her mouth. What? Casey smiled politely. Your mother's treatment has been fully funded. For as long as necessary. Her legs almost gave out. I gently caught her before she could fall. For the first time in years, she cried. Not from pain, are you? I ignored him. Instead, I looked at Casey. The documents. Casey opened a leather briefcase. Inside were several folders. He handed the first one to Wilson. Wilson frowned. What is this? You'll want to read the first page. His face changed almost instantly. Impossible. No. No. Ulysses grabbed the papers. What happened? Wilson's hands began shaking. You bought the debt. What? Ulysses snatched the contract. Her face turned white. You purchased all of Somerville's debt. I nodded. Yesterday, I paid every creditor. As of this morning, I'm now the sole legal owner of every debt you forced onto Somerville. Wilson stared at me in disbelief. You spent over $4 million. For her, I smiled calmly. No, I invested in justice. I took one slow step forward. You believed the debt was your weapon. Now it's mine. Wilson swallowed. You can't do anything. The guarantee is legal. Maybe, but fraud isn't. I looked at Casey. The second file. Casey handed another folder to Wilson. This one was much thicker. Forensic audit. Wilson didn't even open it. He already knew. We traced every transfer, every shell company, every fake invoice, every dollar. Ulysses suddenly grabbed Wilson's arm. You told me nobody could trace it. Wilson couldn't answer. He was too busy staring at the audit. I continued. You transferred company funds into Apex Holdings. You purchased luxury homes, cars, jewelry, private vacations. You used company money to finance your lifestyle. Wilson finally found his voice. It's legal restructuring. No, it's corporate embezzlement. His breathing became heavier. You have no proof. Casey quietly slid a flash drive across the hospital bench. Actually, we have everything. Bank records, emails, accounting software backups, even deleted messages. Wilson looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. My phone rang. I answered immediately. Mr. Frank. It was my chief legal officer. We've completed the acquisition. Good. I deliberately placed the call on speaker, so everyone can hear. Proceed. We've officially filed an emergency injunction. The IPO of Aegis Technologies has been suspended. Wilson's eyes widened. No. The lawyer continued. The Securities Commission has frozen their public offering pending investigation. The underwriting banks have withdrawn. The investment funds are demanding immediate repayment. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, Wilson whispered, You destroyed us. I looked directly into his eyes. No, you destroyed yourselves. Ulysses suddenly exploded. You can't do this. We have contracts. We have investors. You'll lose millions. I shrugged. Probably. But money can be earned again. I've already learned that. She clenched her fists. Why? Why would you throw away millions for someone you barely know? I looked at Somerville. She was standing quietly behind me, still holding the old bank card. Then I answered. Because when I was 16, she threw away everything she had. For someone she barely knew. The hallway became completely silent. Even the nurses nearby stopped walking. Wilson's confidence completely collapsed. He took one desperate step toward me. Frank, we can negotiate. I'll return some shares. I'll compensate her. I'll even apologize. I shook my head. Too late. He lowered his voice. What do you want? I answered without hesitation. I want everything. Your company, your patents, your reputation, your freedom. I want you to experience exactly 1%. Behind them were two investigators from the Financial Crimes Unit. One detective looked directly at Wilson. Mr. Wilson Carter? Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest. For corporate fraud, grand larceny, money laundering, and conspiracy. Wilson stumbled backward. This is a mistake. It wasn't me. He immediately pointed at Ulysses. She handled the shell companies. Ulysses stared at him in horror. You liar. You told me everything was legal. She slapped him across the face. The detectives quickly separated them. As officers placed handcuffs on Wilson, he looked directly at Somerville. For the first time, there was no arrogance. Only fear. I'm sorry. I never meant. Somerville quietly interrupted him. No, you only regret getting caught. Wilson lowered his head. He couldn't argue, because she was right. The detectives led both of them toward the elevator. Wilson looked back one last time. I met his eyes. Then I spoke the exact words Somerville had once spoken to me. Never bow your head. But remember this. You don't deserve to lift it either. The elevator doors closed. And just like that, the people who had stolen 10 years of Somerville's life were gone. But neither of us knew. The biggest surprise was still waiting upstairs in her mother's hospital room. The elevator doors closed. For the first time in years, Somerville took a deep breath. It was as if the weight she'd carried for a decade had finally begun to lift. She looked at me. Frank, you didn't have to do all this. I smiled. I know. I wanted to. She lowered her eyes. You'll never get that money back. The debt. The lawsuits. The legal fees. You spent millions. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old bank card. The edges had become smooth after 10 years in my wallet. I placed it in her hand. You spent everything you had on a 16-year-old boy. I think we're finally even. She looked down at the card, then slowly shook her head. No. We were even the day you came back. We walked into the private hospital room. Her mother was asleep. The dialysis machine hummed quietly beside the bed. For the first time in months, the nurses weren't rushing. There was no panic, no overdue bills, only peace. Her mother slowly opened her eyes. She smiled weakly when she saw me. So, you're Frank. I froze. You know my name. She laughed softly. My daughter talked about you for years. I turned toward Somerville. She immediately looked away. Her cheeks had turned bright red. Her mother continued smiling. Every time she sent you money, she worried you would refuse it. So she always made sure the transfers stayed anonymous. Somerville quietly interrupted. Mom. Her mother ignored her. When you got into college, she celebrated more than when she got accepted herself. I couldn't speak. Then her mother said something that stopped my heart. She loved you. The room became completely silent. Somerville's face turned pale. Mom, please. Her mother smiled gently. You've hidden it for 10 years. I think that's long enough. Without another word, Somerville quietly walked out of the room. I found her sitting alone on a bench outside the hospital garden. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she laughed nervously. I wanted to tell you. Back then. But you were carrying your entire family. You didn't need another burden. I sat beside her. You should have told me. She smiled sadly. What would have changed? You would have felt responsible. I never wanted that. I looked at the city skyline. Casey walked toward us carrying a small cardboard box. Mr. Frank. The restoration team found this. He handed it to Somerville. It's everything they recovered from your old apartment before demolition. She slowly opened the box. Inside were old notebooks, school medals, a faded physics competition certificate, and one sealed envelope. Written across the front, in neat blue handwriting, were 6 words. To Frank, if he ever returns. She stared at it. I forgot this even existed. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. She looked at me. I can't. You read it. I unfolded the yellowed paper. Frank, if you're reading this, then somehow life was kinder than I expected. Maybe you became an engineer. Maybe a teacher. Maybe nothing worked out. It doesn't matter. Because I already know something about you. You never quit. That's why I believed in you. People thought I was foolish for helping you. They asked why I would spend my savings on someone else's family. They didn't understand. I wasn't saving a poor boy. I was saving the future. There's something I've never admitted. Not even to myself. I loved you. Quietly. From the day you stayed after class to repair the broken physics equipment instead of going home to sleep. From the day you apologized for borrowing a pencil because you couldn't afford one. From the day you refused to cheat on an exam, even though failing would have cost you your scholarship. I love the person you were, not the life you had. If we never meet again, promise me one thing. Because you saved one life, I'm going to help thousands. The next morning, I called a press conference. Journalists expected an announcement about my newest acquisition. Instead, I introduced someone to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the founder and chief technology officer of our newest company, Miss Somerville Hayes. The room erupted with applause. Cameras flashed nonstop. The same industry that had blacklisted her now stood to welcome her back. But I wasn't finished. There is one more announcement. The room fell silent. In memory of the kindness that changed my life, my companies are donating $200 million to establish a permanent educational and medical charity. A screen behind me lit up. Its name appeared in large silver letters. The Somerville Foundation. Its mission was simple. No student would ever have to leave school because of money. No parent would lose their life because they couldn't afford surgery. Every scholarship recipient would receive one handwritten note inside their acceptance letter. 3 simple words. Don't give up. 6 months later, thousands of families had already received help. Hundreds of students returned to school. Somerville's software became one of the fastest-growing cybersecurity platforms in the country. Her mother walked out of the rehabilitation center without a wheelchair. You remember? I remember everything. I took the old bank card from my wallet one final time. This belongs to you. She gently pushed it back into my hand. No, it belongs to us. I laughed. What am I supposed to do with it? She smiled. Keep it. So when someone else needs saving, you'll remember how all of this started. Snowflakes drifted quietly across the empty field. 10 years earlier, one frightened 16-year-old had been given a second chance. Now, because one girl chose kindness over comfort, thousands of strangers would get theirs. Sometimes the greatest fortune isn't measured in billions of dollars. Sometimes, it's a single act of kindness that refuses to stop changing lives. 1 year later, the Somerville Foundation had become one of the largest educational charities in the country. More than 12,000 students had received scholarships. Over 3,500 families had received emergency medical assistance. No one knew who funded most of it. Frank in Somerville insisted every donation remain anonymous. One cold December morning, Frank visited the foundation's headquarters before work. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed a teenage boy sitting alone on a bench. The boy couldn't have been older than 16. His school uniform was worn. His backpack had been stitched together several times. His eyes were red from crying. Frank sat beside him. Waiting for someone? The boy nodded. My dad. What happened? He fell from a construction site. Frank froze. The words hit him like a train. My mom says his surgery costs $200,000. We only have $4,000. I came here because someone told me maybe miracles happen here. Frank looked across the lobby. At that exact moment, Somerville walked out of a meeting carrying several scholarship applications. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. She smiled. The same gentle smile she'd given him 10 years earlier at the school gates. Frank reached into his wallet. Inside, the old bank card was still there. The edges were faded. The numbers had almost disappeared. He slowly removed it, looked at it one last time, then placed it into the boy's trembling hands. Take this. The teenager stared at him. I can't. Frank smiled. I know. I said the same thing once. The boy looked confused. But how will I ever repay you? Frank stood up. He looked toward Somerville. She was already crying. Then he repeated the words that had changed both of their lives. You don't repay me. You save someone else. Years later, people would ask how one small charity grew into a foundation that changed hundreds of thousands of lives. The answer was never found in financial reports, or billion-dollar companies, or courtroom victories. It began with a frightened 16-year-old girl who believed one act of kindness could change the future. She was right, because kindness, when passed from one person to another, never really ends.